You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Canada's Justin Trudeau says he will step down as Liberal leader as soon as his party finds his replacement. This actually means he will not lead the Liberals into Canada's next federal election that's scheduled for October, but far more likely to take place this spring. The US Congress has certified Trump's election victory, with Harris presiding. An earthquake of magnitude 7.1 hit Tibet near the Nepalese border today, the tremors of which were felt in several parts of India, including Bihar and Assam. Millions of Americans were hit by a major winter storm that brought heavy snow, ice, strong winds and freezing temperatures as it moved east out of the center of the US and into the mid-Atlantic region, having killed at least 6 people. The United States will remove regulations that have prevented cooperation between key Indian nuclear entities and American companies. This is what US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has said in New Delhi. France has detected its first case of a new monkeypox virus, the health ministry has said, weeks after the World Health Organization maintained its highest alert level amid the epidemic. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has condemned lies and misinformation he says is undermining the United Kingdom's democracy after a series of public criticisms levelled at him by Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Well, our big focus, an earthquake of magnitude 7.1 hit Tibet near the Nepalese border today, the tremors of which were actually felt in several parts of India, including Bihar and Assam. The tremors were felt particularly in Bihar, where people were seen outside their houses and apartments. There have been no reports of any damage to property because of the earthquake so far. But as you are probably well aware, Nepal is actually nestled in a geologically active region where the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates collide, forming the Himalayas and making earthquakes a frequent occurrence. But a strong earthquake with a magnitude of 7.1 and an epicenter in China's Tibet was strongly felt in India and Nepal, according to preliminary reports. This is a developing story, and of course, we will get you up to date with the latest details. With that, let's turn our attention now to Canada, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that he'd step down as head of the country's Liberal Party after weeks of speculation that his time in leadership was coming to an end. This actually means that he will not lead the Liberals into Canada's next federal election, scheduled for October, but far more likely to take place this spring. The Prime Minister also actually pulled the plug on the current session of Parliament, paving the way for a leadership race. Now, Trudeau and his party were initially popular. He had a 65% approval rating shortly after taking office. That was nearly a decade ago. But they've suffered following a cost of living crisis due to inflation in the wake of the COVID pandemic, as well as criticism about the government's immigration and environmental policies, as we have been extensively covering as well. But the end of Trudeau's tenure as party leader and as Prime Minister was all but sealed last month after his one-time deputy Chrystia Freeland announced her departure from her post as Finance Minister. In fact, her scathing resignation letter included criticisms about Trudeau's ability to navigate the incoming Trump administration, their proposed tariffs on Canadian goods. But this announcement prompts serious questions about what comes next for a post-Trudeau Liberal Party and also for Canada. Listen to what Trudeau had to say, followed by Pierre Poilievre's reaction.
Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
We won't have an election before very late winter, early spring. Then there's the possibility that the Trudeau resigns and then goes to the Governor General and says we need to shut down Parliament, while the Liberal Party then chooses a new replacement, a Trudeau 2.0. And so there would be a leadership race. God knows how long that would drag on for. During
you think approximately in March, no earlier than March, as far as you can foresee.
Yeah, probably. And during which time we'd continue to flounder and twist in the wind.
My colleague Maha Siddiqui has been tracking all the finer details for us. She joins us live from Vancouver at the moment. Maha, take us through the reactions in Canada. Is this being seen as a strategic exit by Trudeau to preserve his image, or a recognition that his time has passed? Many say it's not a surprise.
Well, certainly the second reason is more plausible, considering there was a lot of pressure on Justin Trudeau for the last over 6 months with internal dissent and members of his own party who were members of parliament asking him to step down, voicing a concern that they would not be able to fight elections well under his leadership, and that there would be a complete rout for the Liberals in the federal election this year if he were to lead the party. And therefore, the internal dissent, as well as the fact that the NDP, Jagmeet Singh's party, had said that they would bring in a non-confidence motion once Parliament reopens, which was supposed to on the 27th of January. Now, of course, it has been prorogued till the 24th of March. And that non-confidence motion would have been absolutely impossible for Justin Trudeau to actually be able to overcome. That's because the other party, Bloc Québécois, had also said that they would support the non-confidence motion, which meant that Trudeau's government would have fallen. And therefore, this does seem like, in some sense, a face saver for him, an exit before it was really too late for the entire Liberal Party, and therefore a change of leadership now in the offing for the Liberal Party. However, Jagmeet Singh of the NDP has said that even with the change of leadership, they are unlikely to support this government any further. So come 24th of March, we'll have to see whether the new party leader chosen by the Liberals over the next couple of weeks, how will that pan out? Now, the Liberal Party constitution, Parmeshwar, allows 90 days time to choose a leader, but there is some urgency here, considering that this is also the election year, and the Liberal Party needs to now come back from really behind and try to at least not face a route that they were looking at in face of the rising inflation, the housing crisis in Canada.
As always, Maha, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. The big question remains where the Liberals and Canada go from here. Well, for further clarity, we also have with us Sharon Kaur joining us. She's a political strategist. Sharon, thanks so much for making time for us on NDTV. Can Trudeau's resignation be viewed as a graceful exit, or does it reflect a failure to meet the expectations set when he first came into power?
Listen, I think what a lot of people need to remember is that when you have a government that's been in place for now 10 years almost, yes, you have a bit of that incumbency factor that comes into place, where we had COVID pandemic, where we had restrictions in the country, we had a cost of living crisis, high interest rates, and what was a very, I would say, a honeymoon phase in the beginning of his mandate turned into, I would say, not so much in the second half. So his resignation today, given on Wednesday, there's supposed to be a large caucus meeting with the National Caucus, it wasn't going to go well for him. And I think if he waited any longer for that caucus meeting to happen, it would have really, truly made it look like they pushed him out. So right, he quite frankly should have left sooner, when it wasn't so bad for him in terms of having a caucus revolt. But it is what it is, and he is now leaving.
Well, Sharon, from political novice to a three-time Prime Minister, though, how should one evaluate Trudeau's legacy? Did his accomplishments actually outweigh his controversies, or have the latter come to define his term in office now?
Well, you know, I think in the immediate time right now, everyone's looking at all the negative things because it's easy, it's fresh. But I worked in this government for 5 years, and I can say from 2015 to 2020, there were some really good things that we did. There's measures that were put in place that took children out of poverty. There's so much work on reconciliation with the Indigenous communities. So it's really important that we look at the good things that the cabinet and the Prime Minister did as a whole. And you know what? It's important to look at the things that didn't work out as well either. But every government's going to have their time. There's the good and the bad. I do think that right now everyone's very focused on the negative, but time will tell what the legacy is. And I think he's going to have to keep his head up and look at all the good things that were done and reevaluate the things that were not so great.
Well, you worked for Trudeau's government for 5 years, you've said. Would you say Canada's better off without Trudeau at the helm? And do you agree with those who say that Trudeau's charm has finally worn off with the Canadian electorate?
I think given the time we're in right now in 2025, it's time for him to go. We have to remember when he came into office in 2015, the Liberal Party was polling in third place.
Yes.
They weren't polling in majority territory. And he brought in something that the Liberals didn't have for a while. It was this celebrity factor. I've been to events with him where people cheer him on. They want to talk to him. They want to shake his hand. They want to hug him. And that lasted for quite some time. But that changed. I think after a certain period of time, specifically after COVID, people felt disenfranchised. Some of the virtue signaling that he did in his language really upset certain types of people, and it's changed. So I do think that for the sake of the country and the Liberal Party, it is time for him to go. And I think he's doing what he needs to do. And now we have to have a robust leadership race. There's been a lot of talk around whether Chrystia Freeland should just be voted in by caucus, which I strongly disagree with. We need to have a robust leadership battle, because we need people to come forward and bring their ideas. It should not be an appointment whatsoever.
Absolutely. Also, in terms of home ground for us in India, Trudeau's relationship with the Indian government has not been the most pleasant since the last few years. According to you, how much did his handling of this diplomatic situation, as many call it a disaster, actually damage Canada's standing on the world stage, or would you say it didn't impact it?
Well, the Canada-India relations is a very difficult one for even people here in Canada to want to talk about. Yes. There's factions of groups, and we know what the issues are. We have a very large population of very pro-Khalistani individuals here in Canada. And I think the problem has always been is that people in government, not just Trudeau, they don't understand how one group doesn't represent the entire community. It doesn't represent the entire Indian community, the entire Sikh community. And it's created this tension. And I think we've seen that here lately. And we saw that when he went back to India. And then we've also had, there's been claims of India's interference here in Canada. So I do think that whoever comes into place next needs to tread very carefully with the relationship with India. India is an important partner. And we have to work out these difficulties in a diplomatic way and a proper way. And we need to listen to the entire Indian diaspora community in Canada. And politicians need to look at all of them, not just specific demographics in certain groups.
Well, thanks so much, Arun, for joining us. We will, of course, revert you for regular updates as and when things settle down politically in Canada, and see where the Liberals and Canada go from here. But thank you so much for making time for us on NDTV.
Absolutely.
With that, let's turn our attention now to the United States, where a severe winter storm threw life out of gear in more than a dozen states, affecting more than 60 million people from Kansas in the central United States to New Jersey on the East Coast. In fact, governors in several states, including Kansas, Kentucky, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Virginia, declared a state of emergency, and weather forecasts say the storm was moving towards the mid-Atlantic region. But more than 3 lakh customers in states across the eastern US are without power since the storm began. And by the way, aviation tracking website FlightAware reported over 100 flight cancellations across the United States. Meanwhile, the US Congress formally certified Donald Trump's election victory during a session presided over by Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris, who lost the November contest. Well, she's cleared the way for Trump's inauguration in 2 weeks. It went like clockwork. It stood in sharp contrast to 4 years ago when a mob of Trump supporters stormed the US Capitol in a failed bid to block the certification of then-President Trump's 2020 loss to Joe Biden. Meanwhile, a New York judge rejected Donald Trump's request to delay sentencing set for later this week in his hush money case. Judge Juan Merchant ruled last week that Trump's sentencing should go ahead on Friday, despite his upcoming inauguration, rejecting his attorney's argument that his election victory should spell an end to the case. And meanwhile, let's get you an update as far as Donald Trump Jr.'s plans are concerned. Well, Donald Trump Jr. is heading to Greenland, visiting the Danish territory weeks after his father renewed suggestions that the US could somehow take control of it. In fact, the younger Trump is going for a day trip to shoot video content for podcasting and will not be meeting with any government officials or political figures as per initial reports. Now, Trump Jr. has said he has no plans to join his father's administration, instead intending to stay a key supporter of his father and his agenda from the outside. He's especially vocal online, where he often indulges in trolling and sharing memes, and hosts his own twice-a-week podcast, which is actually called Triggered with Don Jr. Meanwhile, in other crucial news, the United States will remove regulations that have prevented cooperation between key Indian nuclear entities and American companies. This is what the US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has said, marking a major step forward in implementing the landmark 2005 Civil Nuclear Agreement. Now, this move, Sullivan said, is an opportunity to actually move away from frictions of the past and acknowledges India's open and transparent engagement with the United States. The top official of the outgoing Joe Biden administration made the announcement during a public address at the Indian Institute of Technology, which is IIT Delhi.
The United States is now finalizing the necessary step, civil nuclear cooperation between India's leading nuclear entities and U.S. companies. The formal paperwork will be done soon, but this will be an opportunity to turn the page on some of the frictions of the past and create opportunities for entities that have been on restricted lists in the United States to come off those lists.
Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to the United Kingdom now, where the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has condemned the lies after attacks by Elon Musk. Keir Starmer says the lies are undermining UK's democracy. This as Musk criticised Mr. Starmer's handling of the child grooming gangs. Musk has called for new elections, demanding Keir Starmer's imprisonment. Listen in to the reactions we have lined up for you.
Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson, not interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case, a gang grooming case.
Well, so much talk over the last few days about grooming gangs, or should I say rape gangs. And Keir Starmer today saying that anyone who's calling for a full public inquiry is jumping on the bandwagon of the far right. Wrong, Prime Minister. The vast majority of people in this country are absolutely mortified by what has gone on. But even worse, the cover-up we've had from the police, social services, and both Conservative and Labour governments. The inquiries that have happened so far have been nothing more than a whitewash. There needs to be a full public inquiry. Let us find out the truth.
And from the UK, let's turn our attention now to France, which has confirmed its first case of the new monkeypox variant, according to the country's health ministry. The patient, a woman from Brittany, had contacted with two individuals who recently traveled to Central Africa, where the virus originated. Health authorities are now tracing potential contacts and investigating the source of the infection. But this new form of Mpox, known as the 1B variant, has already been reported in neighboring Germany and the United Kingdom and is tied to a global health emergency declared by the World Health Organization back in August last year. Well, news and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break. Don't go anywhere. Well, Donald Trump has denied a newspaper report that said his aides were exploring tariff plans that would only cover critical imports, deepening uncertainty among business leaders about future US trade policies. Trump actually responded on his Truth Social platform after the Washington Post cited three sources that were familiar with the matter, saying that Trump aides were exploring a narrow approach to tariffs focused on certain critical sectors. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed concerns over potential cooperation between Russia and North Korea, highlighting the possibility of Moscow sharing advanced space and satellite technology with Pyongyang. This is according to a report. But speaking at a joint press conference in Seoul after discussions with South Korea's foreign minister, Blinken warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin might be on the verge of reversing long-standing policies by accepting North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Well, in other news, US Steel and Japan's Nippon Steel sued the United States government in a last-ditch attempt to revive their attempted merger after President Biden blocked it last week on the basis that the transaction actually posed a threat to national security. The lawsuit filed in a federal court in Washington accused Mr. Biden and other senior administration officials of corrupting the review process for political gain and of harming steel workers and the American steel industry by blocking the deal under false national security pretenses. For further clarity, we have with us Ray Locker at the moment. Thanks so much, Ray, as always, for making time for us. Now, could this legal battle potentially have a negative economic impact on the industry? Or does the merger actually present a real threat to competition and national security? What are you picking up on?
Well, I mean, this is in the eye of the beholder. Obviously, there are a lot of financial players behind the Nippon Steel, US Steel deal. They stand to make or lose a lot of money if this goes through or doesn't go through. And so they're willing to fight the court battle to make it happen. Usually when these determinations are made in terms of national security, there are a number of kind of mileposts that need to be met. And so you can demonstrate that you have the evidence to show that there are legitimate national security concerns. And I believe that the government feels that it has made that case very well here. And it remains to be seen. I mean, obviously, these people have the wherewithal to hire very expensive, very talented lawyers to pursue their case.
But Ray, in light of the legal action that's taken by US Steel and Nippon Steel, what does this actually tell us about the future of US regulatory processes in relation to foreign investments?
Well, I mean, look, we've had these problems before. We've had Chinese interests trying to buy a large port organization a few years ago. That was blocked. We've had other foreign entities trying to invest in US companies. They have been blocked. So this is not really a surprise.
Right.
And by the way, Donald Trump opposes this deal too. So it's not as if US Steel and Nippon Steel are going to get a better deal from the incoming Trump administration unless they find a way to get to him directly and make him change his mind, as he has on the ban on TikTok.
Right. Well, let's see how this plays out. As always, Ray, thanks so much for joining us on NDTV.
Thank you.
With that, let's turn our attention now to Indonesia, where they've launched a program to provide free meals for nearly 90 million children and pregnant women. This initiative actually fulfills one of the president's central campaign promises. And Southeast Asia's largest economy has set an ambitious goal to reduce poverty and become an advanced high-income country by 2045. Indonesia actually formally joined the BRICS bloc of major emerging economies as a full member on Monday. And this free food scheme is aimed at combating malnutrition in children. It's seen as a cornerstone of that goal. But the high cost of this initiative, which is about $4 billion for this year alone, has raised concerns about whether the nation can actually afford it. And a quick entertainment update. Well, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck have settled their divorce and are asking a judge to finalize their breakup. Lopez filed documents in a Los Angeles Superior Court that show the former couple settled their divorce through mediation in September last year, about a month after she filed for divorce. And while most of the financial details of their split were not publicly filed, neither star will pay the other spousal support. And Jennifer Lopez, by the way, will drop Affleck from her legal name once the divorce is finalized. As always, thank you so much for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.